Hi team, welcome to Visual Art 1 2D Art, the online version. I do apologise, this seems to be the nature of things at the moment. I am a household contact and isolating, as are some of you. So what that means is that I have had to enact one of my backup plans should this situation occur, and I wanted to pre-record this so that it's easier and more accessible for everybody, as opposed to being available for a live feed in the morning. Here we see on the front page of our classroom page, I'll put a little note here about the situation, and hopefully Kaya is here in class with you to facilitate any creativity happening on campus. Just a couple of things. I've created a chat group here, and you can just click on this link and it will take you to Google Chat. I'll just do a quick click there and you'll see this opens chat, and we have our chat group there. I see Tanina has already acknowledged that. Just a reminder too, with your little waffle menu up here, see me moving my mouse up here, if you click down it'll give us the chat option here. It's a really useful way for us to keep in touch with everyone. Alright, so I'll just click off that. Right, so I'm just going to pop back into the classwork side of things. By the time this class runs tomorrow, this particular page here on Cubism will be active. And yes, some of you have probably worked through Cubism before, but this seems like quite a good option just to give us a project to get stuck into whilst we're in isolation. Now you'll see on here there's a few different bits and pieces. I have in this end bit here as a task sheet. I'll click on that at the end of this little video so you know what the expectations are. I have a slideshow which I'm going to run through now on Cubism, just a little bit of a brief history and give you some stylistic ideas. These two here, these links here, for an artist called Berlin. I think that must be how you pronounce it. Would be what we would call neo-cubism. And I won't play this now because the footage might be a little bit weird looking at it through a secondary system. But this is a really nice video from the Tate in the UK, how to paint like Picasso, or early Picasso in this instance, when he sort of started the process of Cubism. So let's just jump in right to this Cubism slideshow. I don't want this video to be too long, so I'll probably talk super fast, like normal. Right, here we are, here's Cubism. Let's look at this as a slide presentation. Here we go, Cubism, 1907 and ongoing. What is Cubism? Now this is taken from Oxford English Dictionary, and it states, Cubism is a style and a movement in early 20th century art in which objects and people are represented as geometric shapes, often shown from many different angles at the same time. You've got this one here. Another one, this is from a magazine article on what is Cubism art. Is a style of painting in which the subject matter is represented as geometric forms shown from multiple simultaneous vantage points. And there's a little bit here, but there's more to it than that. Philosophically, it's a theory of pictorial democracy, where every aesthetic element is valued as the same. Intellectually, it's an admission that life is complex and can only be understood from multiple perspectives. So there's that little bit of theoretical thinking in behind it that stimulated painters, artisans of that time to kind of move away from some of the traditional aspects of painting, from Renaissance through to sort of Cubism or post-impressionism and impressionism, that sort of era. This one here I thought was quite a good one because it taps into this reaction and response aspect. And this is from the Tate again, tate.org.uk. It says, by breaking objects and figures down to distinct areas or planes, the artists aim to show different viewpoints at the same time and within the same space, and so suggest their three-dimensional form. In doing so, they also emphasize the two-dimensional flatness of the canvas instead of creating the illusion of depth. This marked a revolutionary break with European tradition of creating the illusion of real space from fixed viewpoints using devices such as linear perspectives, which had dominated representation from the Renaissance onwards. So you can see there's that reaction and response. They've started to think of their canvases for what their physical nature is, and as you can see with that theoretical idea of hierarchy within a canvas, everything has the same value, and within the system around it, that everyone should be viewing things from different viewpoints. The idea of dogmatic information, dogma, is starting to be rejected until it fully gets rejected at the birth of postmodernism. All right, let's look at some of the origins here. And we're going to start with Paul Cézanne, because I think before we jump into real Cubism, we really have to understand the influence of Cézanne. And if we look at the way that he's painted his pictures or structured them, he's using these kind of blocky areas on his canvas to create space and picture planes, kind of moving through this block moment. And I think artists like Picasso and Braque are very interested in how Cézanne has structured his canvases. And we'll see that again here on this one. The same sort of process, whilst it's not traditional Cubism in a sense, it's kind of looking at things from different, kind of alludes to the idea of looking at things differently, because this is a slight abstraction really of the natural world. Things are blocky. You can see some of the blockiness there, and that's sort of indicative perhaps of the type of brush that Cézanne was using as well. So then certain artists have seen that and reinterpreted that blockiness of that square brush into how they approach their own paintings. And then of course we jump into Picasso and what is considered the birth of Cubism, Le Demoiselles d'Avignon, I think that's how you say it. You don't pronounce the S in French. 1907. Picasso, of course, is someone, he's right at the forefront of this, but also as we progress through some examples of Picasso, you can see this idea of different viewpoints and the hierarchy within his work, and how everything starts to get kind of broken apart, abstracted in a sense, but in a representational sense. Go look at this one. So this is that early kind of style. You'll notice the very limited colour palettes. Everything is sort of similar right across the entire painting, and all these different structures. So that the rules and conventions are gone, and these just become simplified geometric shapes representing parts of the form. And you'll see even in the background it starts to morph into the form as well. Picasso always also used different approaches. So this is more of a collage approach, but you can see that similar sort of rendering of flatness. Things are distilling out a little bit within Picasso's work. So this is 1913. And this one here, of course, 1937. So we're almost indicating or moving towards something that might be considered heading towards abstract expressionism. I probably should have put a Willem de Kooning work in here to show the full kind of extent of the influence of this sort of work by Picasso, where it's no longer important to have anything real, so to say. It's a full license to merge foreground, background, and then just change things up. So she's a weeping woman, but probably also sneezing or something. You can see this kind of light here and this emphasis. All this part of the face is deconstructed somewhat into a new color palette within there. Just sort of certain emphasis has changed, you know, and the fun of it, the fun of Picasso, it's able to be, he's got full license to do whatever he wants now on the canvas. All the rules are broken. Then of course, might not be the best image, but this is Guernica from Reina Sofia in Madrid in Spain. Quite a large painting, 3 by 7 meters. If you know much about Guernica, this was his response to the German bombing of the town of Guernica during the Spanish Civil War. Very, very lucky I am to have seen it, and this is what it looks like in the Reina Sofia. Big painting, wonderful, wonderful artwork. Funny little story. I'm a very naughty boy. I always go and stand right in front of all the people watching them, but sometimes you got to do that when there's a lot of people in the room. So that's Picasso. You can see that nice progression in his work, starting off from the early ones through to how he approaches Guernica, still with a limited palette as well. Okay, Braque, 1910, more of a traditionalist with his approach to Cubism. Once again, the subjects within that area of focus are broken down and merged with the background, so that hierarchy is disrupted and reconfigured. Same again, very similar. Bottle and Fishes, 2010, probably a very important era in Braque's career, where Cubism becomes a very, very important mode of dissemination as a painter. Another artist, Juan Gris, Guitar and Fruit Dish on a Table, 1918. Kind of very collage-esque, but kind of you can see this design element which is creeping into it, and flat areas of colour, almost fully abstracting these things within here. They're becoming different forms, and once again the emphasis is changing, and you can sort of see a progression of that abstraction. Marcel Duchamp, Nude Descending a Staircase, to 1912, very, very important painting. So a little bit different though, because he's trying in this instance to illustrate some of that movement, so the viewpoint is multiple viewpoints of a figure moving through space. This might also nudge towards futurism, Italian futurism, but that idea of the viewpoint, so this in a sense would be a viewpoint in time, so maybe that's something to consider about how you might approach a response today. Eugene Metzinger, Le Femme au Cheval, I think that's female on a horse. Once again, very similar, breaking down to simplistic geometric shapes, and all of the canvas is treated in the similar way. Of course, Neo-Cubism. So this is an idea of trying to illustrate how Cubism has evolved, and where it is today, I guess, would be a way to illustrate this, because that era and some of these other kind of movements around that time in European art are still very popular today, still being used today. And so this is just a look at some of that progression from what I could find. And I thought a good example was this Roy Lichtenstein, Female Head, 1977. So this is kind of a merging of pop art with kind of cubist modes of what would I call that? Modes of composition. I would assume from knowing Lichtenstein's work that this is screen print. I could be wrong, but I'd most likely assume that is. And I was fortunate enough to find this particular artist's, oh golly, I don't know how to pronounce that, Miguel Angel Berlincion. Let's just say Berlin, street artist known as Berlin, and this is 2016 Cancun in Mexico, street art festival. Sort of an idea of Cubism, but this is much more organic. The shapes are no longer kind of square, rectangular forms, a merging of photorealism with organic forms. There we go. Couldn't find the date for this, but I suspect it's around the same time. Not a lot of information about Berlin outside of the artist's website. There's some other examples. So heading into the quite contemporary realm, and sort of we find a space where it's harder to find information about artists, because so many creatives are just able to promote and place their own work into social media platforms with little, if any, writing around them or information around them. But you can see some of wider influences creeping into these types of works. Digital art for one, Cubism, pop art, minimalism, postmodernism, all kinds of things are creeping into this, even though you can still make out some kind of painterly aspects. So this is Ryan Hewitt. I found this one here, Joseph Bounds. Still looks painted, but it's very broken up, multiple viewpoints again. And really interesting. I could probably take this part of the presentation further, but this is a Gemmell Design Studio and the idea of Cubism coming into an interior space. I think the second slide is more interesting. So if we were to think of Cubism and the palette being the kitchen, and then every single part of that space has an equivalence within the hierarchy of what that surface means. And so here you can see that manifest in a kitchen space. I can imagine a lot of people have been driven nuts having that as their kitchen, but maybe not. All right, so that's actually all that's within that slide presentation. So hopefully that gives plenty of fuel to work from, and by all means come back and look through the slide presentation. As you can see, I've got this loaded here, but I think that'll be better for you in your own time to watch this How to Paint Like Picasso video. It's loaded to the classroom page, and I'll jump back into this classroom page here. I think it's really important. Maybe I'll just jump in and show you. This is from Berlin's website, and there's some really cool stuff just sort of displaying the kind of work that the street artist Berlin does, and how that's kind of been manifest into big jobs like this. Still kind of a Cubist influence, but like I say, quite an organic style of Cubism. But street art, spray painted, roll it onto the walls. Something really quite interesting and unique about this. Kind of merging, almost like what you might expect from the future if you had merged works in the way that Lichtenstein did with pop art and Cubism. If I just jump back out of here, you see on here there's more stuff about him, but this project links to his website, so by all means go and have a look at that. And then what I will do is I'll just open this up, and I've created a task sheet, and hopefully this guides everybody enough to do something fun today, be it at home or in the studio. So I'm just saying, view slides showing attached content regarding history of Cubism, moving into how the Cubist ethos has morphed into Neo-Cubism. So I'm asking Kaya to set up a still life of some kind. So I'm suggesting you can either use that still life or take multiple photos of a pair from your class from different angles on your phones or iPads or whatever, and then refer back to those images and construct something from those images from multiple viewpoints. But I think it's really imperative that you do, and I've underlined it here, some preliminary drawing so you design your outcome. Okay? Design it. Don't just jump straight in and paint it. Get some kind of formatting or formulation of ideas down before you just jump in. And I put a little note here. Remember that in Cubism we are essentially doing two things. One, we acknowledge the two-dimensional nature of the surface where the illusion of 3D space is no longer a priority. And two, every part of the painted surface could be considered as equivalent in terms of any perceived hierarchy. Okay, so those kind of two aspects of Cubism are really important. Space and how you create space is different within Cubism. It doesn't have to be real space. It's a different kind of illusion, and then everything within the whole surface is important. Okay, so then from the preliminary drawings here, conduct your own Cubist paintings. For those of you who are in class, there are a number of boards supplied that you can use them. And then I'm just saying here, evidence the outcome and post this to a new slide within the class evidence section of your performer. And I'll just make some typos. All right. So if you were looking at the traditional approach, then keep your palette minimal, aka George's Braque. However, if you're doing a neo-cubist approach or postmodernist approach, then you can kind of just about abandon any rule and then go fully ballistic with your colors. That's fine. And like I say, it's linked here again. Make sure you look at that how to paint like Picasso video from Taint Modern. It's quite good. And then there's a little bit more about those boards, and Kaya can advise you on that. All right, I think that's everything I need to discuss. Once again, I apologize. We were intending to do the Paint Effects class today, start the Paint Effects class. But the nature of that particular class, it's imperative that I'm there with you. So we'll just hold fire on that until I get back on campus, and we can at least delve into some Cubism and at least have some fun painting today. All right. I was going to say, are there any questions, but there's no way for you to ask me any, so good luck.